already done that. I've told them who you are. I've told them you're an Irish mother, and you've spent a lot of time outside of Ireland. Let's go back into time a little bit and tell us about your young, lovely daughter, Ava. And she was a little baby, and at one time, a little baby, and you found out some horrifying news. So let's just start at the beginning of the story, Vera, because no one over here in Canada and North America, we don't know your story enough. It's very powerful. So please tell us all about it.
Okay, I suppose my little girl Ava Barry. Sorry, my name is Vera Twomey, and my daughter Ava Barry. She's 8 years old now. She's just turned 8 in November, and you know, we're very lucky to have her, because when she was born, everything was fine, and I suppose about 4 months in, which is pretty common for parents that have kids with Dravet syndrome, around the 4-month mark, we took her in for vaccination, and she was vaccinated at about 11 o'clock in the morning, and later that night, around 7:45, Ava had her first 45-minute seizure.
How long was the seizure? How long? What was that?
It was nearly an hour. It was just over 45 minutes, her first tonic-clonic seizure.
My goodness.
And you know, it was to be honest with you, I don't know whether this happens to other people, but for me, I don't remember hardly anything about the night that it happened. I think that it was such a terrifying experience that you know, it almost got wiped clean. But obviously my mother was there with me. My husband was still out working at that stage, and we called the ambulance. We called my husband to come home, and he got home as quick as he could. We went into hospital. The seizure had stopped by the time the ambulance got to us, and she had another seizure, something like around 25 minutes, again going in the ambulance. So when we got in, they attempted to stop the seizures, but it wasn't really working for the doctors the way it normally would. And subsequently, anyway, we met a pediatric neurologist who sent away blood tests to Glasgow in Scotland, because the tests couldn't be done in Ireland. And they identified that Ava had a syndrome called the Dravet syndrome, which is a genetic malformation of a gene. And I suppose the Dravet syndrome or Dravet syndrome. And I suppose the connection with the vaccination, it could be either or, really. A lot of times kids with Dravet, it's their first experience of a spike in temperature after the vaccination, and they say that's what can trigger the first onset of seizures in kids with Dravet. So Ava continued to have her seizures for, you know, let's say she was a November 2009 baby, so, you know, 2010, 11, 12, 13, you know, 14 on. We went through every medication that was available to our daughter. We had the phenobarbital, the Rivotril, the stiripentol, the clozapam, the Epilim, the Keppra, you know, and many, many more. And unfortunately, as we were told the day that we were delivered our diagnosis, I probably should explain what happened that day. Actually,
do that.
We were brought into a room in the CUH hospital, and the neurologist said to us, you know, we're very sorry to say that we have identified that your daughter has a form of epilepsy, and they said it's not a hereditary form of epilepsy. To which my husband said, well, that's good news. And the neurologist just said, no, it isn't good news. That's not good news at all, because the type of epilepsy your daughter has is an intractable drug-resistant form of epilepsy that's caused by a malformation of a gene or a mutation of the gene as they describe it, but I don't like the word mutation, so I like to say malformation. So the neurologist said to us anyway, you know, your daughter, you need to accept, she said, that your daughter is never going to walk, she's never going to talk, she's going to be in a wheelchair, for sure. Now, she said she would advise us to look into residential care for our daughter because we were going to need residential care for her. However, she said that the likelihood would be that our daughter wouldn't survive beyond the age of 3 years anyway. So that was the delivery of what we had ahead of us, you know, 4 months after the birth of our first child. Now, so, but it didn't end at that, because they had something for us, which was 3 photocopied pages off the internet, entitled Dravet Syndrome for Dummies. And we were handed those 3 pages, and that was essentially it. And I remember thinking to myself, I cannot believe that somebody is handing me this. Like, I have seen these books on the shelves, you know, Microsoft Office for Dummies, you know, Learn Spanish for Dummies, you know, something like that. But this is my child. This is completely and utterly inappropriate. And I wouldn't really be one, Alan, like to be swearing, but what happened to me was that day I started to shout no. I just said no, no, no. And I was swearing, and they actually had to remove me out of the hospital because I went completely hysterical. It was something that had never happened to me before. But this was just the most, I'd say it's probably the worst day of my entire life to have confirmed that, you know, this monster of a diagnosis had been placed on my daughter's shoulders. And so I felt very angry because I felt like, you know, how can somebody tell me that my baby's going to be dead in 3 years' time? How do they know that? You know, I didn't know anything about Dravet syndrome at the time, but I knew in my life that there are difficult things that happen and you have to try, at least you have to try and overcome them or do your best. But the diagnosis we were getting was that there was no hope at all. And they in the following months, they told me that I was in severe denial. And I said to them, yeah, that's grand. Like, I'm happy in severe denial, actually, because my daughter is going to walk. And, you know, if she doesn't walk, it's not going to be from the want of me trying to get her up on her feet. You know what I mean?
I do.
Like, I felt kind of, right, look, if Ava isn't going to be able to achieve walking or speaking, you know, we'll deal with that, but we're not going to deal with it on the basis of somebody telling us that's it. And,
so then you're at the juncture.
You know,
you're at the juncture at that point of having to accept. This is a very key point because when we spoke earlier on the weekend before this show, there's a lot of things that happen to people like us, and what you found out was there was no choice, and there was nothing that could be done, and you know, a lot of people would prefer if you had have just left it like that.
Oh, goodness, Alan, they would absolutely. I mean, I suppose, you know, I've been a terrible pain in the neck to a lot of people, really.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm afraid that I'm not going to apologize for fighting for my child, you know, because, like, as I said to you, I kind of forgot to mention about how the diagnosis was delivered, but after the delivery of the diagnosis, Ava's seizures continued and continued and continued. And what happened was we were started on phenobarbital. I think the next medication might have been Topamax. The next one I think was, it might have been the Keppra. And what was happening was, like, they'd put you on one medication and it would fail, but they wouldn't take you off the medication that had failed. They put you on a second one. And for the first while, we were kind of saying, well, one medication failed. Okay, well, 2 tablets is probably better than 1. So, that would be good. But then that didn't work either. And the next thing, we were maybe a year and a half, 2 years down the line, and Ava was on 5 different medications. At one point, Ava was on 19 tablets a day, and she was still having seizures.
The pharmacological crown and anchor wheel. They just spin that thing around. Hey, try this one. And it doesn't work either. Okay, go on.
That's what was happening, And I mentioned a medication. I suppose essentially what was happening was there was constant seizures and constant trying of different medications, which were mounting up and up. And we got to a point then where there was this medication called stiripentol has had excellent results for some people, and I wouldn't want to come across and say like that, if pharmaceutical medications work successfully for somebody, that's great.
Absolutely. What's the name of that one again? Can you tell me the name of that? You kind of dropped out there.
Sorry, it's a stiripentol, it's called.
Stiripentol. Okay.
Exactly, yeah. So that medication at the time that we got it, it wasn't licensed in Ireland, and they brought it in from England for Ava to try it, because we had essentially run out of options kind of around that time. Mm-hmm. And anyway, I suppose actually there was 1 or 2 more we tried after the stiripentol. However, anyway, Ava was walking at this stage at around the age of 2.5, and because we got our daughter walking, and like I would say to anybody, wherever they're listening, if somebody tells you that your diagnosis and your outcome is going to be the same way that they told us that our outcome was going to be, you don't have to accept that. You don't have to take that, because you can try.
Well, a particularly ridiculous Englishman once told me, now we always have to obey what our doctor tells us. But no, I threw down the gauntlet at that point. I said, no, that's not true. Not always.
Yeah. Sure, you might obey for a while, but, I think it's good to disobey then later in the time, I mean, my little girl at that time that the stiripentol came into her life, it resulted, they put her on the stiripentol. She reacted extremely badly to it, and it resulted in my daughter being in a coma for a week.
Oh, my goodness.
And it was directly the stiripentol medication. It was uploaded into her body too quickly, and she just went down. And we've nearly lost Ava a couple of times, but that was a very, very, very severe. She had a very severe reaction, and I can remember, being inside in the sort of, the room closest to the nurse's station. And there was 4 doctors, and there was about 7 nurses inside in the room. And I didn't realize, Alan, till afterwards, that they were waiting for my daughter to die, because she'd been in the coma for a week at this stage, and they had given up, and it was just a case of putting down the hours until my daughter died. But the thing is, Ava didn't. She came out of that coma, and that child pulled the cord, the IV line out of her arm, and she sat up. And I looked at that child and I said, do you know something? I'll never, as long as I live, I'll never give up on you, because she's never given up, and she's fought from the day she was born to stay with us.
But what does she know, though, compared to all these... What does she know, though, compared to all these doctors that have gone to school and taken degrees and know all kinds of things? Why would you listen to what your daughter has to say at that point?
But that's that's the great difficulty, isn't it? I mean, kind of nobody inside in the hospital was very happy to see us arriving in again, because after time, you develop courage and you develop the ability to not accept what's being said to you and to challenge what's being said to you.
Right.
And that really does make, I think, a lot of the medical people very uncomfortable.
Yes.
Because they're not used to that. They don't like to be challenged so much. But yeah, like after the Seroquintal, there was another couple of medications tried. But the thing was, my daughter had got up and walked at that stage. She'd done it. But after that week-long coma, she lost the ability to walk because of what happened to her. But still, it took us 12 months more to get her back up on her feet and walking again. But she did it. She lost nearly all her body weight. She had developed some words. She had 3 or 4 words, maybe a little bit more. And, she lost those words as well because the seizures wiped them clean. And it took another year to get her back on her feet, but she did it again. And we continued with the seizures. And when I say that we continued with seizures, we're talking about 7, 9, 11, 14 tonic-clonic seizures every day, something like that. Alongside drop seizures, myoclonic jerks, absences, all of those on top of the tonic-clonic seizures.
Can I ask you something? Can I ask you something about the seizures? I'd like to ask this.
Yeah.
It's a couple of sidebar questions. First of all, it's just shocking to think of that at all. But I want to know else. Were there other injuries that came from the seizure? Specifically, did she bang her head on the wall while she was, wrenching back and forth? Did she injure herself additionally?
Yeah, like I must tell you that I think like that there's a couple. We have been incredibly lucky in the sense that Ava hasn't ever had that many, severe cuts or bangs or damage to her face or anything. Mm-hmm. I think there's an element of luck, and I think that there's also just in the practical sense that I'm never more than feet away from the child, because the seizures were coming so often that like you were just kind of waiting for the next one to come. So she'd never be more than a couple of feet away from us. So I was always kind of there to catch her, or my mother was there, or my husband was there, But we have been lucky. She got it was actually, the funny thing was that she has a little mark up near her eye, but ironically that happened. She tripped one day and fell against the cupboard where the television is up on the cupboard on the corner of that. So it wasn't actually seizure related, which is amazing. Oh. But
we've been very lucky. The I suppose, what can I say? Like the things continued, and all of this now, what was going on was very private, because like we've become kind of public people through everything that's happened with it.
But we were very private about what was going on, and we just wanted to get her stabilized on something and get it sorted. But it came to a point in October of 2015 where she had around that time she had 18 tonic-clonic seizures in about 8.5 hours, and she had a cardiac arrest.
Wow.
So she had a heart attack, and around that time we were in the CUH hospital again, and they told us that there was nothing more that could be done other than revisit all of the medications which had already failed.
Oh, right.
And I said that make you want us to go back to the beginning to try all the options that have failed my daughter.
Amazing. Yeah.
I said that doesn't make any sense. Like there must be something else available. And they said, well, all we can offer now is to monitor her seizures, and that you would take her home and make her comfortable. And
can I say right here what
anybody that's
happened?
Irish-
What happened to me at
Yeah.
that particular juncture on my journey was that I was beyond all help, beyond radiation surgery or chemotherapy, and I started using cannabis oil. And after about 7 or 8 months of doing really well on cannabis oil, my doctor told me, "You're doing so well, now you're ready for chemotherapy." Do go
Oh
on.
no. Yeah, he might have been ready, but I don't think you were ready, were you?
No, I wasn't ready at all.
No. With us, it's funny. It's something similar. We were very, very blessed. We've been very blessed in a lot of ways, you know. Like the most
The person who came to our attention pretty much immediately, because at the 2015 stage I had done an awful lot of research about the medical cannabis. I'd seen how well Charlotte Figge was doing over in the States. You know, seen her mom Paige, heard about the Stanley brothers, never thought that I would meet them, but I have met Joelle and I've met Jessie. And
Tell us a bit about who they are.
wonderful people.
Tell us who those guys are right now.
Joel Stanley and Jessie Stanley would be the producers of the Charlotte's Web Oil, which is named after a little girl, Charlotte Figge, and her mom, Paige Figge, who had severe epilepsy as well. And Charlotte was on a do not resuscitate
list at one point. She was having upwards of a couple of hundred seizures every day. And Paige very bravely went to the boys and asked them to
help her daughter, and they did, and they were able to administer cannabis oil, the Charlotte's Web Oil as it's called now, which assisted Charlotte in reaching, you know, the level of activity that she's at now, because I see sometimes on Facebook, you know, she's riding her bike and she's doing all kinds of things, and I just hope that, you know, we'll be the same as that. I believe actually that we will. But at the time in 2015, it was just around that time that Charlotte's Web Oil became available in the hemp store on Capel Street above in Dublin.
And we met Mark and Jim up there, and we got the Charlotte's Web Oil. I met Jessie Stanley in the store very briefly that time. It was Joel Stanley in the in the store very briefly that time, and just was very impressed with his sincerity, and that helped us a great deal also then to trust that
the oil would be a good thing for Ava, and it really was. The results of starting on the CBD oil alone were magnificent.
And where were you when you were doing that? Where were you when you were giving her that oil? Still at home?
In Ireland, Ireland, you know, like in October of 2015, I started a change.org petition to get in contact with the Minister for Health. Now, the minister actually didn't want to meet me, which was hardly surprising, I suppose. But I persisted, and it was around that time that we became very public on the radio and newspapers and any sort of opportunity really that we could to highlight Ava's need for the oil that was working so well for Charlotte to get access to it. We were very keen for a neurologist to be involved
to oversee Ava's care for her safety as well.
Didn't want to meet you, huh?
But no, he didn't. And it took me 8 months to get a meeting with Simon. And in the end, the way I got my first meeting with Simon was that I went on a program hosted by Jonathan Healy. I think it was News Talk, I think it was on. And I just said, look, my daughter's in a really bad way. I need to meet the minister. I've been trying for 8 months to meet him. And if he's not going to meet me,
go up on the train and I'm going to go to Dublin and I'm going to stand outside the gates because I have to meet this man and talk to this man about getting what my daughter needs.
Yeah.
So he rang and I got a meeting. And subsequent, and there was, you know, we had hope at that stage that something would be done, but subsequently nothing was really done. We had another couple of meetings with Simon Harris, and, you know, Ava's condition was, you know, Ava was in a bad way from time to time, really. And so it would have been, we wanted to apply for a license to bring medical cannabis then in. I want THC as well.
Sure.
Because with the Dravet syndrome, the CBD oil may have a good effect, but from what I had read and what I had studied, the THC was necessary to complement the CBD oil.
I just want to stop you right now. I want to
reduction.
stop you there right now because that is such an important point. I'm sorry it's a bit awkward because of the Skype delay that we have, but that is a key point. So many people don't want to have the THC in there because there's a moral reason, or their teacher said it was bad, or some kind of misinformation, fiction, where people need to take, they say, oh, just give me the CBD oil. I don't really want to take the THC because, you know, I don't want to be a bad person, or I don't want to feel weird or something. They never said, I don't want to feel weird when they do chemo, but it's important.
The thing is, I suppose, Alan, people are afraid, you know, they're afraid. And, you know, you can't underestimate the power of fear either, you know, like.
Oh, you can bank on it.
But the thing about it is, the pharmaceutical industry, I think, exploit that fear, and they portray the THC aspect of the plant as something that's very dangerous, whereas I don't see it that way. It's not the experience that I've had with my daughter. It's not frightening. It's not.
It could mess with your brain a little bit, though. You take some THC, it might mess with your brain a little bit. So, you know, you can do that, or we can cut you open with a saw and start taking pieces of that brain out. How about that?
Yeah.
That's okay to do.
Yeah. I mean, this is the sad reality of what's going on, you know, that people are having brain surgery for their epilepsy before they'd be even given a chance of trying the CBD and THC, which do seriously complement each other to the nth degree.
It's definitely the wrong way to look at a telescope, that's for sure.
We, like, I suppose 2017 was the biggest kind of year for us. I suppose what I should say about 16 was, you know, we had the few meetings with Simon, and they told us that we'd have to get a pediatric neurologist to apply for the license for our daughter, and our pediatric neurologist wouldn't apply for the license for our daughter. I tried to find another pediatric
neurologist in Ireland to apply for the license for the medication. I couldn't find anybody else that was willing to take her on to do this. And so then they told us that a GP could apply for the license. So we got her a GP to apply for the license for our daughter in November of 2016. And they played around with the application from November of 2016 to like February time of 2017. Now, what was also going on in tandem with this was that we had met a man called Gino Kenny. He's a TD, a Choctaw, a member of Parliament above in Dáil Éireann, which is the Parliament in Ireland. And he put forward in July of 16, 17. Sorry, I'm just, my dates are getting muddled now. It was July of 17.
Yeah, it was July of 17 that Gino put forward the legislation for people to be allowed to use medical cannabis in Ireland. And
the bill was debated in the Dáil around the December time, and it went through.
Okay,
yeah,
so
sorry,
I'm just going to stop you again because the Skype cut
yeah.
out. Hang on a second, Vera. The Skype cut out a little bit again, and I lost the high end of what you're saying. You said you went to the Irish Parliament, and just pick it up from there. The folks may not know the Dáil. The Dáil is the Parliament, so for people know the parliamentary system.
That's right. Dáil is Parliament. Yeah, and we with Gino Kenny, the TD, the Member of Parliament, he was supporting us all along as we tried to apply for a licence.
Good man.
But the paediatric neurologist wouldn't apply for the licence. The government then told us a GP could apply for the licence, and they mucked around with our application from November to February of 2017. And then we had another meeting with them, and at that meeting, they said that they were not going to accept the application from the GP because the GP wasn't a qualified enough person to apply for the licence. And I said, and my husband said, but like, lads, I mean, are you joking? Because like you told us we could get a GP to apply for the licence. We found a GP to apply for the licence, and now you're saying you never, that was never going to work. So I remember sitting at that fine mahogany table in the beautiful big high ceilinged room, and I said, this is not going to work. Like I said, I'm going to go home and I'm going to do something. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do, Alan. But when we left the all that day, I said to Paul,
I'm going to walk. And he said, like, you're what? And I said, I'm going to walk to Dublin. And my husband thought I was after losing my mind. So,
how far away are you from Dublin? How far is that walk? How long of a walk is that?
It would be in a car. It would be about 2.5 hours, 3 hours to drive. I suppose.
Wow.
It's a couple of 100 miles. So I think it's about 200. Is about 200 miles, 150 miles. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But anyway, like, I mean, Ava was continuing to have seizures like at this stage, and so at the table that day, I said, now the thing was, I began to walk and completed the walk from Mallow to Dublin at the end of February 2017. But around the November time, I had begun a previous walk, which I had started in my home village of Ahabolog, and I walked 18 miles to Mallow in just that one day. And Simon Harris rang me that evening, and he said he'd meet me again. He told me, Vera, I'm not comfortable with you doing this. And I said to Simon, and by the way, Simon Harris, the Minister for Health in Ireland, I said, well, Simon, I'm not comfortable with doing it either, but I mean, what do you expect me to do? Like, you won't communicate with us, and it's not working. And he said to me at that time, he said, Vera, promise me that you won't do this again. And I said, no, Simon, I won't promise you anything. I said, what I'll promise you is that if you come up with a solution to help my daughter, then I will
not do this again. But if you don't come up with something to help my daughter, then I am going to complete this walk and I will be back again to do it. And so that was the November of 16 that we had another meeting because of that original walk that I did. And I stopped the walk because he met us again, but I had told him that I would recommence it. And when they abandoned our application in February of 17, I said, I'm going to start again. So we drove into Mallow. Mallow, as it said now, is about
18 miles from our home here. And we began to walk to Dublin from Mallow.
Did you have any media coverage at all when you were there, Vera? Was there anybody following this?
Well, this was not the one thing that was absent from our walk to Dublin was a plan, because there was no plan.
This was a spontaneous thing because it was on the Thursday that they told us that the application was rejected. I was ready to walk on the Friday, but Gino Kenny and my husband Paul talked me out of that, and I said, right, we'll start on Monday, and I wasn't having anything but that. And Gino got a one-way ticket down from Dublin, down to Mallow train station, and he walked the whole way back up to Dublin with me. We had the TV3 news because I was in constant contact at the time with Paul Byrne, And Paul and his cameraman came out and covered us as we started walking.
3 News.
But that was the
TV3 News. And then a number of radio stations picked up on it as well. It is what happened on the journey that was really amazing. Like I just had learned how to do Facebook Live at the time, so we kept in contact with people on Facebook via the Facebook Lives,
Right.
and people just started to join us.
Oh, that's great.
I mean, on the course of the 9 days that it took us to walk the rest of the ways to Dublin, there was certainly more than 5,000 people joined us on that walk to Dublin.
5,000. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, not all at the one time now, mind you, but people did what they could. When we went from Mallow to Kildallery, people joined us. When we went from Kildallery onwards to Mitchelstown, people joined us. When we went from Mitchelstown up to Cahir, people joined us. And it happened like that the whole way up. We had radio coverage from the radio stations that were in the vicinity of where we were walking. And things, just the most extraordinary kindness. Like, people were so furious that somebody had to do this to get attention for their child.
Now, I'm going to get to the point here. I'm going to get to a point now because will you come back on the show sometime?
Of course, I'd be delighted, yeah.
You're not gone yet, but I just wanted to tell you that I have to take this to some different key points and then get going at some point, because we will have to close the show out at some point. But I want to just tell the folks that your walk to Dublin to change the minds of the parliamentarians didn't really work. They didn't change their minds, so you had to leave the country and take your daughter with you.
Well, yes, what I suppose to kind of try and cut it short and fit it in for you a little bit was we got to Dublin. By the time we got to the gates of the Dáil, I think there could have been, conservatively, I think there was about 3,000 people. The streets were absolutely lined with people supporting Eva. We had a 5-hour meeting with the minister and his team. What came out of that essentially was nothing that was of any immediate benefit to my daughter. So what I did was we found a clinic in Spain which were willing to prescribe the THC for my daughter. Mm-hmm. I went to Spain with Gino Kenny and Luke Ming-Flanagan, the MEP over in Europe, and they arrested me on the way back into Ireland with the THC that I had a prescription for.
Okay, hang on a second. Hang on a second. Mm-hmm. You had to go to Spain. And you over there, you were able to obtain a cannabis oil or a marijuana, some kind of license, and is that how it worked? Spain doctors were allowing you to, Spanish doctors were allowing you to take this, or how does it work?
You're partially right. I did not have a license to bring the THC oil back into the country, but I had a prescription to bring it back into the country. And at this stage, I said, I felt like they can do with me what they want to do with me, because my daughter is more important than anything that they can, threaten me with. Mm-hmm. So I brought the THC back into the country, and I was criticised for this, but I felt it was the right thing to do, because I'm not a criminal and I'm not doing anything wrong by bringing an oil that's been prescribed for my child into the country. I declared
so
my
you
oil.
had it on the plane. Now, you had it on your person on the plane, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you got off the plane and you went into the airport, and then what happened?
They had sniffer dogs waiting inside in the airport to search us. So they lined us up against a wall inside in the airport, and they ran the sniffer dogs up and down all the passengers, including ourselves.
All the passengers?
Now,
ironically, they didn't find the THC oil. The dog didn't find it. So
he's probably high.
I just took it out of my pocket and walked over to them, and I said, this is probably what you're looking for, isn't it? I said, I'm bringing Ava's medication home. So they arrested Gino, Luke and myself. They interrogated us for over an hour, and they confiscated the oil from me. Now, I was released, but I still didn't have what I needed for Ava. So on the 17th of June of this year, we decided that
our only option was to leave for Holland. So we left Ireland on the 17th of June. We went and we were exiled in Holland from June 17 of this year to
2017.
about the 1st of December, I think. Yeah.
2017, I beg your pardon.
That's
Sorry,
okay.
muddled up.
Happy New Year to you too.
Happy New Year to you as well. And so in the course of the time over in Holland, I must say that we got the most extraordinary treatment, the most extraordinary kindness, and the most enlightenment from medical people that I have encountered in the 8 years that I've been dealing with Ava's seizures.
So no sniffer dogs over there, no arrests? No, none at all, huh? No, civilized.
Nothing. Just civilized, logical support.
Wow.
And our daughter was prescribed CBD and THC oil provided from the Transvaal pharmacy in The Hague.
And
say the name of that pharmacy one more time, please. Can you just say that again?
It's Transvaal Pharmacy in The Hague.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much.
So the result of us being over in Holland from June 17 to December was on Ava's THC and CBD oil was that my daughter's cognitive ability has gone through the roof. She has
essentially got seizure freedom.
Wow.
Now, I say essentially because my daughter is a vulnerable child, and you will not cure Dravet syndrome, and it's part of who Ava is, and it will remain to be part of who she is.
Yeah.
And if Ava's temperature goes up, she's vulnerable to a tonic-clonic seizure, and she has had some, but it is insignificant in comparison to what Ava's life had been previously. I like to kind of think that Ava was existing up until the time that she had medical cannabis. It was only when medical cannabis came into her life that she began to be allowed to live her life and have space enough from the seizures that she could make the progress that she's making. My daughter is talking. My daughter is saying things that are appropriate. She is
amazing.
She is making more. She has made more progress in the last 6 months on the CBD THC treatment that she's receiving from Holland than she had in years previous.
Hey, let me ask you this, though.
Now,
you were gone for 5 months out of the country. Your husband is at home. He doesn't get to spend time with his wife or his little baby because they have to go to a different continent to get medication from some civilized people instead of getting sniffer dogged and arrested at home in the airport. And you're using cannabis oil that has THC and CBDs in it together. And now you're at this place where you had to spend 5 months out of the country while your husband stayed home and made sure everything could happen, while you're paying for your own accommodation, I'm sure, or maybe someone helped you with that. You had to stay over there and live in a different place just so your child could take this plant juice.
And you have no idea, there are people in Canada that contributed to Ava's GoFundMe page, and it would be really nice if any of the people that contributed to Ava's GoFundMe page from your country are listening now, because without them, this wouldn't have happened for us.
Well, thank you for everybody that listens to the show in Canada. We actually have more listeners in the United States now, but for everyone in Canada that contributed towards this cause, thanks for paying attention and listening to it. Listen to this woman. Her kid does not have a comatose kid. She doesn't have a dead kid. She has a very alive, thriving kid who has massively reduced these terrible seizures that were on the way to ending her life, apparently.
And actually, sorry, I thought you were in Canada, but there's been masses of support from America as well. So thank you, because without the we didn't want to set up a GoFundMe page. We didn't want to do that at all, and I resisted in doing that for the longest time that I could. But our government wouldn't support our travel abroad. They wouldn't sign the necessary documentation for what's called the Treatment Abroad scheme in Ireland. So we had to do it ourselves.
Yeah.
But it was the best thing that we could ever have done. And without the support on Facebook that I received from people, without the friends, without the followers, without the sharing, we could not and would not have been able to put the pressure on the government that we subsequently did, and we resulted in my daughter being granted a license to bring legal back into the country the way that she should be, and the way that anybody else in Ireland or any other country should be allowed to have their medical cannabis.
I want to thank you for telling us.
Because it is a medicine.
I want to thank you for telling us this story, because you said a very important thing there that I'm sure a lot of people picked up on, is you had to take your own responsibility. You couldn't rely on the government to say, okay, this is a good idea. Okay, we'll let you do this. You were a tiger. You had to go after them and say, I'm not taking this for an answer. I'm not going to be told she can't have THC. I'm not going to be told I'm not able to use this stuff. I'm not going to be held in the country if that's the way you're going to be. I'll go somewhere else and do it. My kid's going to live. She doesn't need death or comas or try the same drugs you used the last time. She needs this plant juice. And that's what you're going to do. So I'm so thrilled that you were able to put a fine point on it. Folks, you can't always take yourself to the doctor and say, here I am, I'm a mess, fix me. Sometimes you have to take responsibility and you have to power through this thing. And you're one of the most strength-filled women I've ever come across in my life. You're a fantastic person. You've saved a child's life, and you're sharing that story to help other people realize, to pull the hood off of their eyes. So thank you.
I think it's so important. I think it's the most important thing to talk about it, because, like,
Geneva was bad. It's a very lonely place. It's a very, very dark place to be. You know, to sort of have no hope, to have nothing to aim for, nothing to try, only just accept. I wasn't going to accept it. Not without trying. No. Not when I saw Charlotte and her success. It's a legal alternative in Holland, in Germany,
Sure.
in Italy, in Poland, in all of these other countries in mainland Europe. It must happen here in Ireland. It must happen over in Great Britain, because we cannot be left 20 years behind the rest of the world. This is the future, and this is something, not only, like, my personal experience is in epilepsy, yours is with the cancer, you know, but it's not just epilepsy or cancer, it's so many other conditions as well.
It is.
That if people look into it and look at the research is there. I would personally recommend the Barnes report, written by Professor Michael Barnes from Newcastle University. He wrote 160 pages of information, which is so informative. You know, if you're starting from wanting to know the basics about the CBD, the
Give
THC,
us his name again, will you?
And it's a very balanced.
Tell us his name again.
That's Professor Michael Barnes.
And spell
from
that for
Newcastle
us.
University.
Spell Barons.
Barnes would be Barnes, B-A-R-N-S, Barnes.
Oh, okay, thanks. All right, we will look for that. That's amazing stuff. I am so thrilled that you have done this, and there will be other people able to do this. So let me ask you this question. You were able to get this medicine, and then you came home and you were detained at the airport by sniffer dogs and an investigation of sorts. You finally got back to your home in Ireland, and you've been there using it. So the doctors now and the government, the politicians now, they must be thrilled that this stuff is working and that everything's up and running.
I don't think they're that thrilled. No, I don't think they're thrilled at all in Ireland anyway.
Why is that?
Unfortunately.
Why not?
Because I just think that there's a particularly tight stranglehold in Ireland with the pharmaceutical industry.
Oh.
It's one of those things that, I mean, I don't have evidence of this, but you can only guess as to why there isn't just complete and utter joy to find an answer to patients' problems. Or I can't understand why there isn't even a willingness to embrace this treatment for other people. But in Ireland at the moment, there have only been 4 licenses granted for medical cannabis.
4?
you know, four in
like
the whole
four
country.
in total in the
One
whole
of-
country?
4 in the whole country, yes, yeah. And you know, the thing is, it's not necessarily all of the doctors, because some of the doctors are extremely resistant to it, but more of the consultants that I have encountered are more open-minded and more willing to consider it, based on even just seeing the dramatic improvement in our daughter. I mean, my daughter was singing over in Holland. She started to sing. I got that. I'm so blessed that I got that on a video, and I was able to put that up. You know, she like, this is a child that they said would never talk.
Kim, we're going to need to get
now.
that video on our page. I'm just telling my producer Kim and Danny, we need to get that video somehow in Green Crush World, because I want to see that.
Sure, I think if you go to YouTube and type in Ava Barry Galway Girl, I think it comes up there on YouTube. It's spectacular, you know, and I don't know why they don't want to embrace this. I think even based on the miraculous, it's not even a miracle, it's just logic. This works, you know.
Yeah.
Like, based on Ava's progress, they should be rushing a proper and considered legislation through. Nothing rash or ridiculous, but something to help the ordinary people, you know. But that's not happening here at the moment. But Gino Kenny's legislation is up for debate again, I think sometime in February or March.
Right.
It's being held back again on another point at the moment. But, you know, I just hope that people here will see sense.
Well, listen to this.
This is something.
We do have this clip available now. I want to play this. This is a little girl who lives in Ireland now. She's already lived for a good portion of her life, for 5 or 6 months. When you're such a young person, that's a long time. She's already lived in Spain and also Amsterdam, and she was going to be banging herself around for a long time, probably snapping herself out of existence. She has had seizures. She has been in a coma. She has tried an unbelievable amount of medications, none of which worked. So when that happened, they offered her the medications again. And that's kind of nuts. But anyway, here is Ava Barry singing a brilliant rendition of Galway
Ava,
Girl.
Galway Girl.
Galway Girl.
Galway Girl. Yay, my pretty little Galway Girl.
Galway Girl.
Galway Girl. My pretty little Galway
She's so cute.
Girl.
She's smiling.
Look.
Yeah, and
That's amazing.
Actually, I think I don't know whether it's gone out in the States or not, but Ed Sheeran, the man who wrote that song, you know,
Right.
I actually managed to someone got in contact with him and told him, because that's his song. I think he's going to be on The Simpsons or something in the coming days, or maybe just gone. I heard that on the radio the other day, but you might know Ed Sheeran, so it's his song.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And like, I was able to pass on a message to him to tell him, like, that, you know, he really touched her. Like, that's like, that was an amazing day. It really was.
Well, you Irish people have to stick together. This is a terrible situation that is seeming to change, because I'm going to guess that there are far more people in Ireland as a country that need cannabis oil than just 3 other people besides your daughter. I just don't believe that there are only 4 necessary cases of this particular oil. I don't believe it. I think a lot more people are going to have to get to the point where they realize.
Oh, there's so many people that there's so many people that need it. There's so many people that are looking for it, and they're just not coming into contact with the doctors that are accepting of it at the moment. And not everybody is in the position that we were in to get such enormous support to be able to leave the country and to go and do what we did, you know. So like we have been,
you know, it's been an awful struggle and it's been awful hard with Ava, but we've been very, very lucky, you know. that we've been lucky that she's such a fighter, and we've been lucky that the people around the world cared enough to, step in and stand up for my daughter.
You're amazing. I told you this when we spoke on the weekend. I know you've got a husband. I know you've got a family. But I love you. I love you, Vera Twomey. There's no getting around it. There's no getting around it, Vera. We're going to have to figure something out. We're going to have to get together for real sometime. I mean, you got to write a book, man. You've got an incredible book there. You've got a wonderful story. And it's true. And it's going to help other people.
We wouldn't have been able to get there only that everybody stuck together. My mother, my husband, even my kids, because Ava's my oldest. Ava's 8 now, but my Sophia is 6, Michael is 5, Elvira May is 3 in a couple of days. Even that they're such little kids, but even they were talking below in school, telling their friends, "Mommy's gone to get the medical cannabis," So that's
good for them. We're going to have to change some perceptions around and get people to understand that this thing is not a bad thing. It's a tool, and it's a food, and it should be used properly. And when you do that, you're going to have a much better time than just following the party line of this is a crime and don't do this. It's better that we have people like you, and I'm happy to be in that group of people that realize some things work, and we need to stop pretending that they don't. So, Vera, thank you so much for coming on the show. We're going to have you on again, absolutely, and we are going to hear some more progress from you.
I hope so. I think so. I hope so. Yeah. Hopefully it'll be for everybody else as well as Ava. Yeah.
As well. Okay. Well, thank you very much. This will be the very first interview that I've had this year, and I'm so happy that it was you and that you are helping turn things around.
Oh, thank you, Alan.
We will definitely get back in touch with you.